Great minds discuss ideas, and I'm here with two great minds, Josh Blackburn and Dr. J. Nass, and we are going to try to tackle the idea of, well, I've been on this kick, guys, about, good morning, by the way.
Good morning. I was going to say I was real impressed with that intro. That I like that.
It's a work in progress.
I like it.
And what I typically like to do, and I'm glad kind of reminded me by you saying that, is I like to do the simultaneous sigh. Give us a chance to breathe this morning deeply and breathe together.
Simultaneous
sigh.
So
if you can, guys, you can withstand if you feel like it, but blow out all your air. Take a giant deep breath. And exhale.
Wonder how long you're gonna make me hold it.
Oh, it's good to breathe, and it's good to breathe with you guys.
It is good to breathe.
November 1st, it's a crisp day here. How are you guys doing?
Oh, Lord, it is freezing this morning.
Yeah. Where are you at, Jay?
Like I am in
globe.
Technically West Tennessee.
Tennessee.
If you know Tennessee, I'm somewhere between Nashville and Memphis on I-40, much closer to Memphis than
Centerville.
Centerville's on the east side of Nashville. I'm on the west side.
Oh, it's not Centerville, but Crossville. Not Crossville.
Still on the east side. So it's
what's the other seat?
Nashville.
What's the
west? You're thinking Jackson, Brownsville. Jackson and Brownsville, and then you get all the way. You get to Memphis after that. Where am I? Let's see if there's a good. I'm near. Well, the closest town I'm to is Alamo. My town proper, and I'm the last mailbox in the very corner of the town, is Friendship.
Well, let's not broadcast where you are.
All right.
Well, I never go to Friendship.
I hear you. You're way.
I live in the middle. Good luck finding me in the middle of all this.
You're in West Tennessee. I got you. I'm in the other Grand Division, East Tennessee.
All right.
So, yeah.
We got some Tennesseans.
I have family over by North Carolina.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, we got a lot of it.
Beer, yeah. A lot of craft beer, good craft beer.
We were talking about having maybe a reunion, a 2A. Where were you? What floor? You weren't 2A though, were you?
I was
freshman year.
Was up on the hill in the just outside of campus. Well, I was
not on freshman year.
Paradise House?
Oh yeah, the entire time I was in the trailer.
Really?
Man. Yeah, and then I left the trailer and went to an apartment with Joseph Rhodes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, honorary,
He's a great guy, man. I miss Joseph Rhodes.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's just jump right into it then. I have been working on this thesis, and I'm working on an essay about how everybody has about 5 sermons that define who they are. And by sermons, I mean just like I think you said stump speeches, ideas, defining messages and lessons that they've learned that they hope to pass on to others. And so 3 is typically the capacity of the human, soul to hold on to. 3 is like the normal memory capacity. And then 2, the other 2 is usually the fresher ones we cycle through, right? Like we're never done learning lessons, and so
or relearning.
That's why maybe and relearning them, yeah. And I think it's just important for me at least, it's important to think about that concept and use it, and
that's bothering me. Sorry.
Solidify. No, that's all right. So solidify those messages so that, and own them. And so I'm always curious about other guys and other people's the lessons that they've learned the things that they come back to, and especially at our age. And so, and I think that deals directly with who we are as men, you know, who we've become and who we're, you know, becoming. So Jay, I'll go to you first. You talked about having sort of transformed in the last year, couple of years, and
Well, a few years,
changed as far as it goes. Yeah.
very much so. You know, I went to medical school, and it's very, very intense. Had a child at the same time, then a subsequent divorce, so learned a lot of lessons right away, and it wakes you up to a lot of things. And so for me, a lot of what used to work for me didn't work. I found scenarios where it didn't work. And so for me to comment on like, oh, lifelong things that you should take with yourself that'll always work and be wonderful. Well, things don't always work. So, I mean, you have to tailor them. And
but I mean, for better or for worse, the things that we collect, the lessons we collect, are not always necessarily useful.
Right?
Like,
right.
To everybody, they're often things that we just love. You know, the things that we've come to that makes us who we are. Whether, you know, for better or worse. I don't think all of the lessons I learned or the things that I preach are necessarily good.
True.
Even though it troubles me to say so, I hope that they are.
But you want to ferret out those things that harm unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like I said briefly to you, not that I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, but he says, you know, become a monster and then learn how to control it. And there are things about me that are bad that need to go away. But there are some monstrous things about me that you could probably integrate and use them to become a better, stronger person. And you know, people assume monster with evil, but monster can just be strength. You know, something that you're particularly good at or focused on or whatever. Be a monster of that, and then wield that weapon wisely, you know, with some discretion, instead of just hacking people up with it.
Well, and that's, yeah, go ahead.
But for me, you know, I'm 48. I've spent 48 years with, you know, honing this weapon and finding out I want something different. I want to go a different way. And I'm not sure that this works for me anymore. And so when you talk about lessons of a lifetime, there may be more valuable ones depending on where you're at. Because there's things that don't apply to adulthood. You know, I saw a kid talking about trying to relate with adults the other day, and they're all talking about drinking and their wives and their kids. And this guy's like 12, and he's like, I had nothing to bring to the table. So I was like, my girlfriend, man, she's, you know, that's all he said, just to sort of say something, because the lessons we learn when we're younger and are useful aren't always, well, they mature, they grow and they mature. You can find out when it's okay to tell someone to step off, right? As a child, you're like, be kind to everyone, turn cheek, you know, grace, mercy. But sometimes you got to be a monster to a person if they step on you. And as the little children, how do you teach that to them? I mean, we kind of just trust that the teachers will take care of them. I mean, a lot of kids, like, someone pushes you, you knock them out. You know, you have those dads. Yeah. But other people, like, don't get in a fight at all. Like, what's right, you know?
Yeah.
So I was I was the don't get in a fight at all guy.
Well, and you know, that works too. And Josh, we were just talking about this. It seems like the whole idea of manhood and being a monster and developing these sort of outlooks.
Yeah. That's something that, I mean, I probably do need to like footnote, talking about like sermons and stump speeches. I have no problem, and occasionally clinically, I just look at people and say, look, men are monsters. Full stop. Like, from a biological perspective, testosterone is a really tricky thing to have flowing in your body, amongst other chemicals and hormones and neurotransmitters. It's a real challenge to tame, domesticate, control, right? What you do with your body when you've got this stuff going on in the world underneath your skin. And that's a man problem predominantly, right? Because we're the ones actually killing ourselves, each other, and committing acts of domestic terrorism, violence at alarming rates. Like, that's just a fact. That there's no dispute that this is a man problem, which means it basically has to have some kind of man solution. And I think this is a conversation you can have with a 12-year-old man. Like, look, brother, I got bad news for you. You're going to have a whole lifelong struggle of how to tame yourself. So start now. Because if you don't, it's going to get you. It's going to cause you problems. It's going to cause other people problems.
Well, and I think that's the good news for the 12-year-old boy.
Yes.
Is that we can start now. You can start now. As I think, to Jay's point, it's harder, or maybe this is some of what I heard you implying, Jay, is that it's harder once we're this age to sort of start readjusting our outlook and engagement with the world. Then at the age of 12, I feel like that's the good news, is that they are just starting. And
Yeah.
what do you think, Jay? Is that something part of what the struggle is for you these days?
Well, I think my struggle is similar to the 12-year-olds, is you have to rediscover yourself, and you have to rediscover those parts of you that are useful and integratable, and those that are not useful and need to be honed and controlled. So think about it like this. You have a martial artist, and he's trained to fight. And because he's trained to fight, I don't know if you've ever taken martial arts. I have. And one of the first things they train us to do is to not fight. They're like, we give you these skills only so they're there when you need them. But what martial art gave me was the knowledge that I could hurt you, but I don't have to. And imagine a person who, say he's just a big guy, 12-year-old who happens to be 6 foot tall. He has the ability to hurt you, but he doesn't know. He's new to all this, new body. He may hurt you on accident because he doesn't realize the monster that he is. He can utilize that strength. He can turn himself into a football player and heavy labor. He can go the exact opposite and use his brain for stuff. Who knows? But some people have like natural kind of stuff going on that they could put themselves and others in danger, or it could save lives. And so for me, I'm at that point in my life where, like, there were some things I did in my younger life that weren't helping me so much. And one of the big ones is boundaries. I figured that if I was nice enough to people, that they would be nice to me. And the meaner they were to me, the nicer I was to them, to kind of shame them for being so awful to me. But what ended up happening over a lifetime is you just get stomped on. And so at some point in time, I had to go, I got to tell people to step off, and that's unnatural for me. And I got to just accept that they're going to be angry, because the first thing they do is, oh, you're a narcissist, or you're an awful person. I'm like, if you weren't such an awful person, we would not have gotten to this point. Okay. The only awful in me is I was too awfully nice, and that gave you permission to be awful to me. And so, it's like, so I'm in this world where I'm trying to learn how to be more assertive and to be more of a monster myself, more aggressive about things that I want or need, and less aggressive about those things that don't matter. I don't see any reason why you should aggress a person just because they dress funny or, look different or whatever. As long as it's not bothering me, I usually leave it alone. But that's, I know I'm probably in good company with that, because that's a very libertarian thing to say. Just, stay out of my yard. But my problem is I was letting everybody into my yard and getting mad. It's being tore up. I'm like, I gotta have my yard.
Yeah, and it sometimes it helps to have like a no trespassing sign.
Or it doesn't. Then you got to be a monster.
Well,
you got to go get the gun.
You have to inform. Hey, did you see the sign? Oh,
yeah.
Right. Oh,
right.
Okay. Now, can you please leave?
Right.
Oh, you're not leaving.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think
now we're going to escalate
what you're talking
use of power, right? I have the power to ask.
Yeah.
I have the power to make you aware, and at the very last resort, I have the power to attempt to remove you.
Right. Right.
Or I have the, in some circumstances, if it's somebody else's yard, I'll just walk away.
But what you're talking about is boundaries, right? Like that's what the no trespassing sign is the first less invasive boundary, right? Like the boundaries get more invasive as people get closer into the core of our personal space, right?
And I'll get really technical when we use that boundary language. It's actually enforcing the boundary.
Right. Right.
You can have a sign, but if you let people trespass, the sign is useless. You have to enforce the boundary. There are consequences for boundary crossings.
Yeah. I think Jordan Peterson said this, but I had heard it in a sermon somewhere, and I haven't verified this. So maybe y'all can do that for me, because I'm lazy. I should have looked it up. He said that the meek shall inherit the earth, and that word meek is not very well translated. He says it means something more like those who have swords and know how to use them, but keep them sheathed, will inherit the world or the earth, So you have to be powerful and formidable and then peaceful in that order. Right.
Or I would say it's actually all at the same time.
Well, I mean, true enough. But you learn the last part. I think you do.
It's used. Well, I mean, yeah, it'd be one thing if I had a sword in the sheath, but I was acting sheepishly.
Right. Because
hey man,
if you are harmless, you're not virtuous.
Could you please stop? Versus like, hey,
right.
This is no.
If you are dangerous, a monster, and control it, you're virtuous. If you're harmless, you're just harmless. Because being incapable of cruelty just makes you absolutely a victim to anyone who is capable of cruelty.
Well, everybody's capable, but not everybody's willing. I've found generally people that are boundaryless end up being passive aggressive. So it's not an aspect of like whether that person's going to be aggressive; it's when, and the when is often not of their own deliberate choice. It's reactive. It's triggered.
Were they being monsters, or were they lacking their own personal boundaries that people trampled on them? Or were they trampling other people's boundaries? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So here's what I would say. Like, I think people are all inherently monstrous. It's part of being an animal. It's part of the fall.
Well, yeah, it's because you're just acknowledging the first sin is what you're doing.
Yeah. This is the starting point. So accept that this is what you could. Some people become outrageously monstrous. Some people deny their monstrousness. And then it gets them when they're least expecting it.
Well, I think it's a spectrum. There's people who are completely ignorant and maybe even incapable of their monstrous nature, and then there's people who are very knowledgeable about it and control it and summon them to good ends and bad ends and outcomes. Because you can not know you're dangerous, or you can be so stomped on as a child that you never express any whatever. But what happens to some of these people, and what was happening to me, was you be nice, someone stomps you. You be nice, someone stomps you. And all it did is make me bitter and resentful.
Yes.
It's like all I've done has been nice to this person.
Yes.
And all they've done is stomp all over me. And when I bring it up, suddenly it's my fault. I'm,
Yes.
damned if I do, damned if I don't. You get this. So it's one of those situations where it is a spectrum of monstrousness. We all have monstrousness, whether we know it or not. And
Yes.
some of us know it and some of us really know it. And it's worth exploring, I think, because it can make us strong or it can make us weak.
And I'll have to do the Socratic thing, and maybe we can kick around defining what it means to be a monster.
Right.
Above and beyond just simply being aggressive, because I think self-harm is monstrous. Self-hate is monstrous.
I would say monster in the sense of someone who is capable of some great deed. Like think of a monster. They're powerful, they're strong, you respect them, they're frightening, but they don't have to be frightening. Is Aslan a tame lion? No, Aslan is not a tame lion. Okay? If you've ever read C.S. Lewis, he's not a tame lion. But they weren't necessarily afraid of him. I mean, they feared God. They feared Aslan in that way. They respected him. But they knew he was Aslan. They knew he could control his stronger, powerful nature.
Yeah, and maybe I would want to make a distinction between monstrous and powerful.
True enough. You can do monsters have to be powerful?
Monsters have power. I think what's monstrous is
to be a monster, you have to have power over someone.
Power.
My monster may not be your monster, right? Yeah. You're like,
fair.
Who's this?
Fair.
Flick,
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah. I guess it. Power
like I'm afraid
over,
of bees. I don't like bees.
Right.
I had a dog who used to eat bees, so I'd bring my dog with me. And eat bees.
I feel like monster is maybe. I know that's the word that Jordan Peterson used. We've used it often, but I don't think I don't. Yeah,
it's one to kick around.
Right.
Yeah.
So me trying to articulate
something to think about
in fullness is hard because it's not my word. I can come.
I think that a more appropriate word would be if like something that has to do more with the sword or a weapon or a thing of effectiveness, a thing of power. I think is what we're talking about as we are at the stage of life where we're looking at our lives and thinking about, according to Eric Erickson, we're getting to that stage. We're probably not there yet, but we're getting to that stage where we're looking at the generative versus generativity versus stagnation. What have I done with my life? And I feel like this is something that comes up for guys like us at our age, in their early to mid 40s, as we start thinking about what effect do I have, and looking at what sword do I wield? Do I wield a sword? And that's,
and where do I
think thinking of it as a sword rather than a monster.
Right. I mean, it's just an analogy. You're not. I mean, we're not talking about a one-eyed, one-horned, purple people eater. We're making an analogy here of someone who's got great power but needs to exercise great responsibility.
Sure.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you can, like I'm a doctor, but I can't walk into a nephrologist assembly and stand up and speak to them and say anything that they'd be interested in. I'm not a nephrologist. It's not where my monster has power. Now I might do that to be a jerk. Let's stick it to these guys.
Yeah, and maybe this is probably why I want to make a real sharp
kidney docs.
real sharp distinction between power and monster, because it's one thing to be authoritative, it's another thing to be aggressive. These are real fine distinctions, but I think it shows up in life where
the difference is control, right?
Well,
how to control it.
It's part of it's control, wisdom, deliberate choice of how you use your body. Because I can speak to my children in an aggressive way, or I can speak to my children in an authoritative way. And depending upon the day, the line between those two is very slim.
Right. You can hide your monstrous nature from your children, or you can expose it.
Well, well, and this was going back to I think it's important to define our terms, and so I'm trying to pound this one out a little bit, even for myself, as far as the potential to be aggressive or violent is maybe like at least for me, that's kind of what I think of as monstrous. It's this potential to be aggressive or violent or harmful, and that's why I would include things like self-hate, self-harm. Those are monstrous acts
against yourself. Sure.
against yourself or against others, right? Because it ends up
True
being
enough,
the
you can
same
hurt
kind of
yourself and try and hurt
behavior,
somebody else.
right? If I hate on somebody, like as a behavior, like as an actual action, right? Or I'm aggressive or violent, it's pretty monstrous.
Well, I'm
It's
not
quite terrifying.
understand
for
that I'm
others.
not using power
Yeah.
and monstrous as synonymous. I'm saying that
Yes.
monsters have power, they aren't power. People often
Yes.
make the wrong distinction with God. They think that because he is all powerful, that there is nothing he cannot do, which is a lie, because God cannot do nonsensical things. If he did, it's tantamount to lying. And the Bible says that God cannot lie. So he can't just make stuff up and call it something that it is not. He can only call it what it is. And so let's not say that a monster is power, because that's not what I mean, we may think that because someone has power, they are a monster, but that's not the same.
Correct.
I think it's definitely
is a type
it's
of power.
definitely something that I would like to refine, and it's not something we can get refined today, but I think it's something as we continue to talk, it's something that I would like to continue to talk about. It's what is this thing and what name do we give it? Because it does have to do with monstrosity. It has something to do with authority and power and effectiveness.
It might be
but
sin nature.
It could be sin nature, but I think that's the monster side of it. I want to focus a little bit. So we have about 3 minutes left, and the thing that I'd like to wrap up with is, and the thing going forward, the thing I'd like to wrap up with in general is, what do we do with what we've just talked about? What today? How can we put this idea, that as we're shaping up? I don't like that word, shaping up, but as we are shaping, as we're taking shape as
the idea is
gentlemen,
right?
Yeah. What is it that we do to what actions do we take today? What actions can we take today? And one of the things that comes to my mind is the is an emphasis on today taking time to reflect. And
I think that
being patient. I like that thing. Someone who said something about patience. I think someone said something about patience, or maybe I read it earlier today. Is being patient in how I react to things.
Well, that's the difference between responding and reacting, right? You can react to something or you can respond. But I think that thinking is an action, and that's what we're doing. We're thinking and we're discussing. And I'm wondering if God didn't put a little bit of monstrous nature in us, not as a sinful thing, but as a self-preservation thing, so we could fight this horribly hard and difficult and complicated thing we call life. I mean, because if you go back in time, life wasn't easy. We didn't have toilets and running water, and you had to have a little bit of a monster in you to survive. You had to kill an animal and eat it.
With that thought, what do you bring in practically? What can we do today to
we can
implement that?
Like I said, we can think. And one of the things is discerning between what monstrous act will help me out today that does no harm and shows control, or should I even think about that? Because I think people don't think about that, and they just let randomness drive their life. Like, I'm just going to behave how I behave depending upon whatever comes up today. That's a very unprepared kind of notion, if you ask me. And I think that preparing for our monster and thinking about it, where it comes from, is a thing that we can do. Like, okay, this helps me make good decisions going forward. If I realize that lizard brain, monster, sin nature, power, whatever you want to call it, is there, it helps to first define it. I think it might be a little different for everybody, but I think it's always there. And that helps you make different choices. You say, what can I do today? It's like, well, realize that when that cashier shorts you, you don't have to be aggressive with her. You could just be patient with her. Person cuts you off.
Well, and let's try. In Ramble Source, I like to use I statements. Let's use I statements. Prefer not to talk about others, but ourselves. How can we change today? And so, Josh, can you bring us out with what do you think? What can we use in what we've talked about today?
I think everyone needs to define for themselves what's their monster.
Right.
I need to define for me, what does it mean to be monstrous, and what am I going to do about it?
What is its tendencies, right? Because it may tend to do something with you that not with me, and then you can predict behavior. You can predict when it's going to do something, and you're like, okay, now's the time for me to take a breath and respond rather than react, right?
So yes, I would agree with you, Jay, there that, once you become aware of something, you can start to attempt to predict it. Sometimes it's a little unpredictable. At least it's been in my experience. Sometimes I find myself, even at this age, occasionally unpredictable.
Something will come up and I'm like, wow, I'm like that.
But a lot of things are patterned, right? Exactly. But most of it is patterned and semi-automatic or automatic, which means you can
don't
make
think
a
about
plan. But exactly. But if you start to think about it, then you become aware. Then you can start to make a plan.
Well, that's why I said
create a protocol.
Was doing something. Thinking was doing something.
It is, Thinking, when I think of even drilling it down, like getting aware, naming it, analyzing it, the hard work sometimes of being willing to accept that, I am that way.
That's hard. That's the hardest part. I really am.
And what am I going to? Right? Yeah. And what am I going to do about it? Because no one else is going to do it for me.
No.
Amen.
And they'll do it for you by mistreating you or leaving your life.
Maybe that's in the realm of options. Absolutely.
Right.
Or we'll get codependent with one another, or we'll have all other kinds of systemic.
I've seen that too.
Sure. There.
Well, all I know is what I will do.
Needs, stuff.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that, guys. I think that gives me.
Oh, is that what WWJG stands for? What would you to do?
No.
God, I had that wrong for so long.
Well, guys, I hate to wrap it up so short, but I've got to go, and we all have things we got to do today. So, if you guys don't mind, I'd love to have you guys back on as we continue to define what it means.
Bye.
What it means to cultivate a sense of authority and effectiveness. Dealing with our aggression, dealing with our effectiveness, our the sharpness in which we cut through the world. And thank you guys for your input, and let's keep talking about it.
Rock on. Thank you so much.
See y'all.
Have a good day.